This is Hard Parking, brought to you by Right Honda and Right Toyota out of Scottsdale, Arizona. I'm your host, Jake Benning, recording from my home studio here in Gilbert, Arizona. Exciting episode for you coming up on today's show. I recently spoke to Ralph Gilles, the Chief Design Officer of Stellantis. Ralph's appointment of Chief Design Officer includes Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Maserati, Fiat, and a few others. I would say that casually he's best known for the Chrysler 300, also known for the Viper GTS, a few other vehicles. He actually started as an interior designer. Most people design cars from the outside in, but I asked him about that, and he gave an excellent response, and that's going to be coming up here in a few moments. A little bit of car news before we move forward. This was posted July 1st, but apparently this has been going on for a while. Hyundai has a theft problem. People have been stealing their cars using a Gameboy. Apparently you upload a program with a Gameboy and somehow you're able to get in and open the vehicle as if you were its owner. According to this article, Hyundai and Kia are no strangers to theft problems. I think there's the Kia, there's the Kia boys. And what they do is they steal base model cars using a USB charger to turn the ignition cylinder. But apparently these Hyundai Motor Group EVs are now the first electric models to be specific targets of these Gameboy hacks. It works once the car is woken up by touching the door handle and activating a handshake protocol between the car and what would be the owner's key fob. A program is then activated on the emulator, which begins to talk to the car. The device tricks the car into thinking that it's a legitimate key by using a specific algorithm that will eventually calculate the right code, usually in seconds. Sometimes it could take a bit longer. Be wary if you see a stranger walking around with a Gameboy in their hand, especially in 2024. Continuing on with Hyundai, on routers, I don't know if I said that right, or is it routers, routers? There's a lawsuit out there that accuses Hyundai of faking U.S. sales data for electric cars. On July 8th, a group of Hyundai motor dealers has sued South Korean automobile giant in Chicago federal court for allegedly inflating sales numbers for electric vehicles while punishing franchises that would not participate in the ruse. Dealers that agreed to improperly code the vehicles were rewarded by Hyundai with wholesale and retail price discounts and other incentives, according to this lawsuit. Hyundai said in a settlement on Monday that it does not condone falsifying sales data and had opened an investigation after it was alerted to the allegations. So, July is not good for Hyundai. After this word from 4Wheel Online, Ralph Gilles. For over a decade, 4Wheel Online has been bringing the best truck accessories and truck parts to enhance the appearance and performance of all trucks and SUVs. They are dedicated to providing an extensive range of upgrades that will match any make or model on the road. The truck products cover everything to give your truck a custom look and added functionality. Need a wheel and tire package? Head over and use the configuration tool. They carry all the major brands of wheels and tires, so go get outfitted today. Visit them online at 4Wheel Online. All right, we're joined by Ralph Gilles.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. So I know we met out in the wild, and it was it's amazing how car people tend to congregate like that. So it's a pleasure to kind of re-meet you again digitally here.
You know, it's funny. I saw you and I go, hey, that's the guy that some of my friends from Michigan have tagged me in the photos, and we don't look really anything alike. You know, we share some pigment maybe and maybe some hairstyles.
Part of the coconut.
But, you know, yeah, exactly. Oh, what size, right? So when you wear a hat, where are you? Because I am one latch away from being too big.
No, I'm my head's kind of an average head. My helmet's usually a large. Let's put it that way. So.
Okay. Yeah. We'll talk about some of the racing and stuff. You know, one of the things I want to ask you is, because I've gone through a lot of your things online, and not in a creeping fashion, but, you know, I want to be, you know, honor your time. And I don't like asking things that people could find in literally 2 seconds if they just open up, you know, Google and looked. But one of the things is, you know, what's a design you've been associated with that, or you had a major role in that seems to continuously surprise people that maybe don't necessarily look into your background as much?
Things like the Pacifica, the Grand Cherokee, and the Ram. I mean, people think of me for the Viper and the 300 typically. But yeah, I actually love these kind of mainstream cars that really are supporting the company. I mean, they're the bread and butter of how we make money. And I learned because those customers are not myself, right? So I'm a car guy, so to speak, designing cars for moms and truck lovers and all that. So I really love the idea of jumping into those people's minds and heads and doing the research and then trying to crack the code on relevant product that's going to be hopefully segment leading stuff. So that's really what I love to do as a problem solving, mentally oriented designers.
So you strike me as someone who's very personable, not only for the fact that I, personally got to meet you, but just in kind of watching you interact with other people. Where does that come from?
Wow, I think part of it's two parts. One is growing up as a minority. I grew up in a relatively not such a diverse part of Montreal, Canada. So I had to kind of assimilate. I had to understand how to work with a lot of different cultures. Now we had Greeks, we had Italians, we had Armenians, we had Lebanese, we had white, we had all kinds of stuff. But the Black community was quite small, so I kind of was forced to integrate with a lot of different types of people. But in my modern day life, that's long gone. I'm kind of used to it now. That's not an issue now. More, it's for me, every single person I meet is an opportunity to do market research. I'm really taking an opportunity to kind of deconstruct needs and wants, try to find what we call them design latent needs. What are people missing or what are they hankering for? So that's just in a conversation, people will describe something that they wish existed, especially when they know you're a designer. That's the first thing they start downloading. I wish you did that or that. So I love meeting strangers. I love going to new cities and kind of even just walking through a new city is an anthropology project for me, and just looking at how things work, what people choose to drive. Every time I see a car go by, I look who's driving it, how old they might be, what's their story. So I'm just a curious George kind of person, to be honest.
That's I was listening to that when you go to cars and coffees and things.
Yeah.
How often can you go to those things outside of, let's say, Monterey Car Week and just kind of blend into the crowd?
Depends. I mean, I've been to Porsche ones. I've been to Radwood. I really like Radwood. Those I can kind of go a little bit longer and blend in and depending on I try not to wear stuff that says Mopar or Dodge on it. But
right.
I go to Carlisle, forget it. I can't go more than 10 feet. But that's fun in its own way, obviously. Some of these people I've been to the shows over the years, and I know them. People actually, I see them grow up. I see them bring their kids. There's one little girl that I met when she was 12 years old, and I saw her now she's 20, and it's amazing that I have same picture with her 10 years later, and it's kind of cool that she's still into the hobby. So there's a sense of community that I really don't mind being part of. I actually enjoy it. But I go to a lot of stuff like Pebble Beach, but that's a design community that we know each other. And then you got I would say the enthusiast community. What's amazed me in the last few years is now any kind of cars and coffee, there seems to be somebody who I have something in common with or has seen something that I've done on one of the shows. So that's kind of cool. I think I love that because it's an opportunity to again get to meet that person. What happens is I turn the conversation around and they want to know all about my life, and within probably about a minute I'm interviewing them. So it's a lot more fun that way.
Yeah, because you're more of I think the key communication is being an active listener.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't really understand that, right? Because that way you get to learn about people, their likes or dislikes. And for your case, you can turn around and apply that personally, but also apply that to what you do every day.
It's food.
Speaking of which, right, 30 years, I think 5 companies within that 30 years-ish.
No, 32 years, one company. But the joke I like to say is I've
the
worked
mergers
for 11,
and stuff.
Yeah, 11 different CEOs in my time, and about 5. The company's changed names 5 times. My business cards are 5 different things. With that comes completely different cultures, different missions. Sometimes fascinating. Actually, every one of those chapters has been enlightening for me. Brought travel. I mean, I spent time in Germany when we were at Mercedes, so I spent a lot of time with the Germans and got to see the inner workings of Mercedes-Benz. And then Alfa Romeo, one of the brands I've loved since I was a kid. Can't believe I was able to work on some Alfa Romeos, and actually I still to this day go to Italy all the time in Turin and visit our studios there. Work with Maserati actively now with Klaus in Italy, and now the French. I've always been a fan of the 205 GTI, one of the cars I wanted to get one day, and I finally did get one right before the merger. I just happened to buy it, and I didn't even know we were going to merge with Peugeot and Citroën, and here we are now, all one big happy family. So it's been an amazing journey. So I am an anomaly, I think, in this world. Typically, in my line of work, people don't stay more than 10 years. They kind of move on. It's normal for designers to bop around, but it's changed around me. Haven't had to because it's kind of my assignments keep changing when I'm in place here.
What was there besides cars? Was there anything in high school? Like,
You're gonna laugh.
example, I thought I was going to design Jordans and jumpsuits when I was in high school and cars.
I was a nerd. I loved calculus. I loved physics. Still do. I was really good at math. Wasn't so good at trigonometry. That's when it kind of went sideways. I liked art history, stuff like that. So I thought I was going to be an engineer. I like the mechanical side of a car as much as I like the design. I spent a lot of time wrenching. I've built many, many engines. I've put in lowering kits on, I can't tell you how many cars. Done a lot of harnesses. I love building wiring harnesses. I've done injection modifications on carb cars. I've converted them to injection, did all the programming myself. So really, that's how I flesh out my engineering needs. So I went down that path, but the art side of me kept tugging at my heart, the industrial, the sketching side. So when I was a kid, I would sketch all the time, but then build model cars, take them back apart, build them again, so I kind of had this vibration between mechanical and art. And I finally chose the art path as probably to go against my parents' wishes. So it was one of those things where
What were your parents' wishes?
Well, I wanted me to be a doctor. My older brother is
your brother. Yep.
The classic, I joke, but in the Haitian community, a lot of Haitian immigrants, which is my family's from, a lot of them are doctors because it's a surefire. You go to school, become a doctor, make some money. That tends to be the flow. And I think a lot of immigrants or minorities can relate to that. Parents push them in those ways. And I just didn't want to do that. I can't stand the sight of blood. So being a doctor wasn't going to work for me. Yeah.
You mentioned your love for Alphas.
Yeah.
Can we talk about at some point before the end of this call, your S2000 Alpha?
Oh yeah. I mean, I have a few Alphas. I've been very lucky and they weren't expensive years ago. So I bought a few of those juniors.
Right.
I've been, tinkering with Alphas for a long, long time. Now they're very valuable. But my latest project, if you want to go there, I bought a GTV6, a mid-80s GTV6, and I ended up putting an S2000 engine swap in it. Only literally my friend just said, "Hey, why don't you do it?" And I said, "Okay." It was during COVID, so I had a bit more downtime than normal. So just started getting my Sawzall out. I bought a whole, on a skid, I bought literally the entire S2000 engine, transmission, rear cradle, everything, and then started, and it fit. I mean, a lot of metal work, a lot of fabrication, but
right.
I've got this bizarre, first time I've done anything like that is kind of out. And the funniest part, I shared it with my Alpha buddies all over the world, and I thought they were going to put a hit on me or something.
They loved it that much. No, I love the GTV6. So we had that conversation, and I think there's one. So this is July 10th. I think there's a project car on Bring a Trailer right now, and so now every time I see that, I think about, wow, what could I do with that based on what Ralph's.
I'll send you a picture of it. Maybe you can flash it up when you post-produce it.
Oh, absolutely, man. What's one of the biggest misses? Are you allowed to talk about those? What's something that Ralph was like, oh, this is gonna be killer, and then it wasn't?
I think, to be honest, the Viper. So I'll tell you why. And actually,
which gen?
The Gen 5. I think. I know. Hold on. But it launched. It had a rough launch because when it launched, I remember being there and people are like, "Where's the paddle shift? Where's the automatic?" Or it didn't have all of those accoutrements that everybody else was doing, right? So that I thought we missed something, and probably we should have made the car maybe a couple inches longer, just a little bit for taller people. That was still a sticking point. Just little things like that. But the biggest thing was transmission, right? Should we have done a paddle? Now you see what happened to Porsche. They've done PDK, then back to manual, then back. What I mean? There's always this age-old, people want what they don't have in a way. But now in retrospect, the cars are understood now. They're beloved and the values are going up. So I wouldn't say it was a miss, but it's like I always wonder, had we launched it with the two options with a paddle, we couldn't afford it at the time. We did the car in the middle of exiting bankruptcy. So it was not the easiest thing to imagine. But I'm very happy overall. To see people, doing amazing things on the track with the ACR, and it's really cool that car even happened at all. People don't realize, that's the other thing. People don't realize these cars just don't happen. I mean, it takes a lot to conjure these things up. So instead of complaining what you don't have, just worship the fact that the car even exists. I'm talking about all supercars, any of those low volume. They're miracle babies when you look at what corporations really have to focus on.
I saw that car. because I remember because I had just moved here to Arizona. This was 2014, so I saw a couple of them out there, and that's the first. I like all Vipers pretty much, but that one was the first one I fell in love with since the GTS. I think it was a 97, 98, and I go, oh, that's a cool Viper. And it was actually on my short list of cars that I was looking at before I bought my Type S that I have now. But the prices started going up. I'm like, do I really want to do that now? And now they just continually gone up. So, I mean, maybe been a somewhat of a miss, but not really. But that's a beautiful car, man.
Thank you. And it's taught me how to drive. I mean, when I first got, I had a 96. I got in middle to 2000s, and it was a handful. So I took it to the track. I got driving lessons, and I finally mastered how to drive that car. And the Gen 5 is a lot easier to drive. But once you master a Viper, everything else is easy to drive. So it really has helped me develop my reflexes, my skills, and really understand what cars can do.
You know, you talked a little about all the travel you do earlier. And so I have a question for you. You know, Ralph today in 2024 versus Ralph in 2004. How different is the complexity of your life?
Wow. Well, it's almost, you got to throw COVID in there. So before COVID, I was flying to Italy probably 11 times a year, 10 to 11 times a year, going to board meetings in Amsterdam or London, actually, sorry, 4 times a year, going to South America twice a year, China twice a year. And then that's not even mentioning all the stuff within the U.S. The Concours shows I go to, the auto show reveals, the media launches. I was always at an airport. That's been my life as long as I can remember. The last few years has changed. We've learned to go digital, which has really cut back my travel by 2/3 at least. And my role's a little different now. When we merged, we kind of split the baby. So my counterpart that came from the Peugeot side has taken over Alpha and some of the brands over there. I still have Maserati, but I have a really good team there that can handle it. And I've got some studios in South America that are run again by. I put some really good people in place. I've learned how to delegate a little bit. So I got some of my life back. Let's put it that way. I can balance. But there was a time in my life from about 2006 till 2019. I woke up in hotel rooms not knowing where I was sometimes.
Let's go back a little bit further then.
Yeah.
You get your job. At what point did you realize, like, what was your this is real moment? You know, was it when you were meeting somebody that you maybe in a million years never thought you would meet? Your first paycheck, you know, that letter, the original letter?
Yeah, all of that. I mean, I think, this is my dream job. You know, so I'm one of those kids that wanted to do this. Didn't know exactly what it was, but I wanted to be in the industry designing cars. And it's far exceeded all of that. I mean, yeah, I designed cars with a team. I mean, started off, most artists think of themselves as single contributors, but you quickly learn that designing cars takes a village, literally a village of people, engineers, designers. So that being part of that has been awesome. Being part of this family, growing up and watching these things be born, literally. But for me, the turning point, there's been a few. In terms of the biggest promotion I got was being a director in 2001. I was head of very young, 31 years old, very unusual as one of the youngest directors in the company. And I didn't want the job. I was like, what are you doing? You guys are nuts. I'm still a manager. I just want to enjoy what I'm doing. But they saw something in me. I don't know what it is. They kind of threw me deep into the pool. So I had to learn quickly how to interface with execs at much older than myself, much more experience. So that was a kind of a feet to the fire moment. Really changed my life. I had to really change my priorities. I just had kids too. I had one kid born. My wife was pregnant, so I was right in the thick of it. I was going to grad school at the time that I got the promotion, so I was still in business school. So everything was happening at the same time. Like, oh my God, I was like, what have I done? But I loved it at the same time. I kind of got off on that challenge, let's say. So yeah, that moment was like, wow, this is real. This career is no joke. So I went from being a designer now to almost a businessman and also a team leader and learning how to speak. And I got asked to speak at a lot of things. So it's really, converging of all these things. Really pretty exciting at the same time, scary.
Speaking of speaking, when's the last time you got nervous? Or do you still get nervous before a speech or an interview?
Not anymore. I just did my first commencement speech, and I was nervous before that because it hit me as I was going up there that there's, 300 or 400 young people that are kind of looking at me as, am I still relevant? I thought to myself, at 54 years old, am I relevant talking to a bunch of 22-year-olds or 23-year-olds? So yeah, it made me nervous because I'm in the automotive. I'm kind of used to speaking to the automotive world, but this was a diff because not everybody in the audience, most of them were not auto. Only 20 of them were car designers. The rest are graphic artists, fine artists. So how do you? I felt like I was talking to my teenage or my daughters. and I can only be so relevant to a 22-year-old child, a woman. So that was something that probably rocked me. And then I had another commencement speech a month later, and I got that one down. So let's say doing it for the first time is always a bit nerve-wracking.
Do you think, kind of a psychological thing, do you think that stems from a lot of times when you're doing things with people in the automotive world, you're talking and you have peers that you're very familiar with around, even if they're not directly in front of you, versus just this entire room full of complete strangers?
That's it. Yeah. Plus, they can relate. You get the laughs when you kind of talk about things that they can relate to very easily. So talking to a generation, four generations younger than yourself, you have to leap into their minds. And something about public speaking that I've learned is don't ever speak to yourself. Right? You kind of have to really understand what your audience is looking to get out of the moment. Be quick. Be efficient with what you're saying, but be present. And that's something I use in my whole life. Is being present, not just kind of going into a bit of a daze and just going on send. You really have to be in the moment, understand what the person on the other side of yourself is excited to hear or wants to get out of it. So that's not easy.
Has imposter syndrome ever set in?
Of course.
The feeling that,
yeah.
Does it happen? Does it still happen now, or was it a lot early on?
All the time. I mean, I get, I think personally, I think I've gotten way too much credit for a lot of the great stuff this company's put out. Because it's convenient. I mean, for most journalists, that's on the name they might know. So it's, Ralph did this, or he penned that, or he, was part of this. So I despise that because I know it's not the case. I know it takes at this point, I'm a coach. I'm like a football coach. I don't run the ball. I'm not the quarterback. I'm literally the coach on the sidelines now, making sure my team can win the game. And that's what I do, right? So I can't get the accolades for running this touchdown when I'm the coach, right? So there's a lot of people behind the scenes that don't get enough credit. Now, imposter syndrome is probably going a little too far, but there's definitely times that kind of invades my mind, and I try my best to reflect, and really celebrate my team every chance I get.
Yeah, I've noticed you're a big we guy, not a me guy or an I guy. And there's a lot of people, I think, in the industry, any industry, who's had any levels of success that kind of forget about the we when they're talking. Is that something you have to consciously think about, or is that just?
It's second nature now, and I definitely had a run-in with the boss many years ago when I presented, and I said a lot, and I actually speak about this. I mentor a lot of young people and speak at schools, and I talk about that a lot. You have to be careful because it's easy to say I. It's tempting sometimes to want to be the star in that moment, and learning to say we, just that detail, that the using we versus I can go a long way to endearing yourself with your mates, and also showing. And that actually gets you more respect from your bosses, because I notice it now when I'm listening to my people. So yeah, very, very powerful to we.
Let's get into some Detroit stuff. I had this thought because we lived in Grand Rapids 15, 17 years. And, when we wanted to go out and party, I think we went to Windsor once, which is just past when I first bought my NSX. Every other time we went to Chicago. What's it been like to kind of see Detroit seemingly hit kind of the proverbial rock bottom and kind of work its way back up, and you're still there in the thick?
So glad you asked that question, because and Detroit's finally getting first population growth. I think in this last year it finally is growing in population. And I came to the city. I remember I thought something happened because we got lost and drove right down Woodward on the way to get dropped off at school. And my parents and I were looking out of the car. What happened? There was not a soul on the sidewalks. There was nothing going on a Saturday afternoon, and we couldn't believe it. And we come from Montreal, which is a city, at the time was a metropolitan city. People are bustling and everything. So we just, first of all, that was a shock to us. Then we learned, over the years that was pretty normal in Detroit. Today, Detroit looks like Chicago. Detroit looks like not as New York City or anything like that, but it's incredible. The riverfront's developed. The eat scene is incredible. A lot of these, and I give a lot of credit to the gentleman from Rocket Mortgage who's invested in a lot of Detroit's infrastructure. The older buildings are being repurposed, reconverted into beautiful shops, living. A lot of people are turning those into homes. So now you have the Book Tower is half residential, a little bit of business, beautiful restaurants at the bottom, and there's a rooftop. I mean, these beautiful buildings that were literally empty for 30 years are being redone. And finally, the train station, I give Ford a lot of credit. They invested heavily, the Ford family, the Ford Foundation, into rehabilitating the old train station. And that was an eyesore for as long as I can remember. You probably remember on freeway and seeing that thing sitting there with the windows out, dark, ominous, dystopian thing. And now it's this gorgeous icon that people are going to travel from all over the world to see, so it's beautiful to watch. It warms my heart to see that, and it makes it easier to hire people. So now I can
Right.
hire people from California, from all over the U.S., even the world, that want to live in Detroit. They want to literally live in the city, commute if they have to, or work from their apartments. But it's completely turned around, and the city's safer. The city's beautiful, and people live in it. The key to a city is for people to live in the city limits, and that's slowly happening, where you're actually getting residents now back in the city.
So there's a part of freeway from, I think, just past Ann Arbor over to Detroit Metro, the airport. Does that still look like it's been a bomb zone, or they've
No,
kind
it's
of
cleaned up.
cleaned that?
Yeah, you need to make a trip up here. So when the Super Bowl came years ago, I think about 10 years ago, the Super Bowl visited, and that's when that got cleaned up. The freeway got redone. The
Nice.
tire got redone. The famous tire got redone and modernized. The bridge over Telegraph got redone, and that just keeps happening. So there's all these road projects. The roads are pretty much beautiful now. A lot of the roads have been completely like ground up redone. So the city has really gotten a fresh coat of paint and a lot of investment, a lot of influx of tech in the area around Detroit. A lot of tech companies setting up here. So it's a great story. Cleveland is going through the same thing. Toledo, Cincinnati, a lot of these Midwestern cities are getting a second life, and it's great. And what we're finding is people that had left the cities to go find work elsewhere are coming back in their 40s and putting roots down here. So it's just amazing. It's hard to find a home now because you can't find houses anymore because everybody's bidding to get in. Yeah.
Yeah, that hasn't always been a problem there. I think you
Yeah, who would have thunk it?
buy an entire block for like 30 grand 12
Yeah,
years ago just outside Detroit.
I know we're off topic here, but there are people that have literally bought for $1 entire sections of the city and
Right.
converted them into housing. Beautiful brownstones, or these beautiful. They're track houses, but they're gorgeous. They're very, very nice. $150,000 homes for people. They're fantastic.
Sounds like a tremendous ROI.
Yep. Yeah.
So as I was getting ready for this, I had to make sure I was shaven and clean. And I started thinking, I was like, Ralph's always like clean shaven, so 30x years. I mean, you're 54, multiple decades full of fashion trends and things like that. Have you ever tried to experiment growing the goatee or a mustache or the beard?
So
Doris,
fun
like,
fact.
cut it out or what?
Sometimes I can grow a beard like yourself. If I stop shaving on a Wednesday, by Monday I look like you. So I grow a beard very quickly, and sometimes I do that. If I have a long weekend, I don't. I kind of don't shave on the weekends, and I grow a little rough. That's when I realize how old I am. I get the little salt and pepper. But I've been clean shaven on my melon since I was 27 years old, and it started off as an economical decision. I got tired of going to the barber every two weeks and spending $20 or $30, whatever it was. So I decided to learn how to shave my own head. So I've been doing it ever since. I spend that money on tires and other things, for my race car.
Did you ever experiment with like the ball head shavers and things like that, foil shavers, and
I
settle
tried
back
all
down
of it.
to a
None
razor?
of it. Yep, none of it works. I use a Fusion Mach 5 and a little gel, and that's all.
It's faster.
Keep it simple. Yep.
Yeah, as long as you stay on it, it's definitely faster. One of the things I talk about a lot is perception versus reality. And, my perception is probably a lot of people's perceptions. We see Ralph out there, and I see you on interviews, magazines, racing cars, having a lot of success, doing Monterey Car Week, being able to, like you said, Radwood or overseas, probably 24-hour Le Mans at some point. The perception is that's everything, and you are living the dream job, just like you said. What's the reality behind a lot of that?
Yeah, I used to get, and that's the thing. One of the things I hate when people say, "When do you work?" Because they see me, they perceive that like I'm on a permanent vacation or something. What they don't see is a lot of those things you describe. I'll leave like Friday afternoon. I'll take a half day. I get 25 days of vacation being an exec at a company so long, and I will literally divide about 3/4 of those days into long weekends. I'll just take a Friday here, Friday there, Friday there. And I'll either leave town Thursday night or Friday morning, and I'll rush and do that, and I'm back home by Sunday night. So I pack in a lot, and and you're gonna laugh, but every time I get up every day, I try to live 2 days in one day. I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I wake up really early, 5 o'clock, and I I work out, and I knock out some emails, and I try to do as much as I can in the evenings. I'm tinkering on my cars, or I'm catching up on dinner meeting with business or friends. So I'm packing a lot. Eventually, I collapse once in a while. After a month of doing that, I have a day where I just can't move for 20 hours. But I've always been like, I'm a kind of hyper impatient person, so I tend to fill my calendar up, and I love that stuff. And if I don't do it, I kind of miss it. So I try to pack in a lot. That's all I can say. And I have friends that keep inviting me to cool stuff, and I'm like, oh man, I don't know how I'm gonna make that work. And I find a way. I've even done like lemons racing, where I showed up literally an hour before I had to put my helmet on, jump in the car. I did a stint and then went home. Just check the product. And because a lot of times I'll promise my friends I'll do it, and I forget I promised, and it comes up. I'm like, damn, I promised I was gonna go to Gingerman and do a stint for them. So stuff like that, pretty crazy. But I have a supportive family that's always kind of let me, pack that stuff in.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what's the trade-off, right? It's got to be some of the family time.
Yeah, well, that we do some pretty epic. I mean, over the years, my family and I have done some epic vacations. So I make it up with, we love traveling. So I'm in Australia with the kids, Tokyo, Ireland, all over, Hawaii, of course. We love Hawaii, things like that. So try to so it's spendy, but they love it. My daughters love Spain, and they love kind of these, I would say, 10-day long family vacations. So the rest of my vacation days are all family. And sometimes a long walk in the park is pretty cool too.
What do you? It's got to be cars 24/7, but if it's 23/6, what else are you doing? Are you like a secret closet nerd? You like watching Game of Thrones? You like watching this? Like, what do you do?
Well, if I can't count Sims, because Sims is actually cars too. But I like cooking. I started cooking a lot more. I make a mean pasta dishes and salads and halibut. I taught myself how to make halibut fish. I eat mostly fish now. I don't really eat red meat much anymore. Stuff like that. I like cooking. I like building. I used to do a lot of basements for friends. I love working with wood and tools and stuff like that. And drawing. I want to get back into it as I get a bit older. I want to start sketching non-car stuff. Scenes and people, animals. I love that stuff. So a lot of things I want to still do in the future.
So Ralph makes a mean salad. You're taking credit for making a mean salad.
A mean French bib lettuce salad. It's amazing.
Well, that sounds super amazing.
I'll go to a restaurant
2 more for you
and try to reverse engineer it when I get home. So yeah,
that's funny. 2 more for you. A lot of guys start on the outside of the car. I may draw a wheel, a circle. Next thing you know, I'm drawing the side of the car, maybe a seat, maybe the engine, basically like the old Road and Trek magazines. You started on the interior. Why?
I love it. It's because the interior is a collection of products. It's multiple products kind of in one space. So I really enjoy that. And when I draw cars on the exterior, I tend to look at the form first, just the basic lines. What 3 or 4 lines communicate the shape of the car? To this day, I love designs like that. I love elegant designs that are, you close your eyes and you can imagine them without. They don't have to be fussy full of details. They really just speak with their proportions.
This is a personal one. So we were talking at Fountain Hills. This was the second time, a couple weeks after we met. And you saw my podcast logo on the side of the car.
Yeah.
Now, you've been on all sorts of things. Like I said earlier, everything. Been doing this for decades. You saw the logo and you said, oh, you have a podcast. We should connect. I'd love to get on the podcast and maybe we can help each other out. And I'm just some guy with a podcast. Why?
I don't know. You struck me. I liked your car, number one. And I thought you were very approachable. And I think, and I actually am enjoying the podcast as I hoped I would. So it's, I think, peaceful souls. I tend to connect with people like that they're not out to sting anyone. They're out to learn and enjoy other humans. And I have a simple motto in life: is I leave people and things, but as better than I found them. That's my objective in life is to, and I felt that you had the same kind of mentality.
Well, thank you for the improvement on that. My wife will agree that, if anyone can leave me better than they found me, it's probably, great for her.
Excellent.
Ralph, thank you so much for joining Hard Parking. We'll have to reconnect again soon. Let me know when you're in Arizona, get some coffee or something. I have a few other fun questions I would love to kind of pick your brain about.
All right. We'll see you when it gets a little cooler. All right.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thanks, Ralph. That conversation, just like every conversation, is brought to you by The Cell Shop, an Arizona-based retailer that strives to be your destination of choice for wireless services, whether Arizona, Washington State, California, Texas, and Florida. They're an authorized AT&T dealer, so visit them at cellshop.us and get connected today. I want to thank Ralph Gilles for taking the time. Hopefully you guys understood how incredibly busy this guy is, and for him to offer to come on the podcast. I did not ask him. He asked if we could make something happen, or volunteered to make something happen, and it's a lot bigger process than I think any guest, including Adam Carolla, that I've had on here. It was just, there was a lot involved there, and I can't wait for him to come to town. Hopefully I can run into him and maybe grab a cup of coffee or just something super casual. Left a lot of conversation on the table. We were kind of cramped for time. And if this was your first time listening, go ahead and leave a review. I could always use new reviews. I appreciate it. Stick around. The show is really interesting. And so with that being said, I want to thank Right Honda and Right Toyota, Toyota of Huntington Beach, Claremont Toyota, and Gardenia Honda, 4wheelonline.com, Cell Shop Wireless Services, AutoCannon, officially licensed Honda and Acura gear, Patreon business supporters, Automotive Specialty Tool out of Owings Mills, Maryland, Kuya Automotive out of Winter Garden, Florida, Pell Construction out of Caledonia, Michigan, Beak House Small Home Design out of Ashburn, Virginia, and Traverse City, Michigan, Shaving Success with Wes Tankersley out of Boise, Idaho. You could join myself and Wes Tankersley, One Drink Wednesday, on Instagram. That's at One Drink Wednesday. We also do have a TikTok as well. Talk about alcohol, talk about current events. Sometimes we have big guests on. We had Whistlepig on with us a few weeks ago. We have Koenig coming up. Koenig out of Idaho, one of Wes's favorite distilleries. If you want to help the podcast upgrade, join the Patreon for as little as $3 a month. Shout out to Mark Stoneman, Catherine Cox, Eddie Ramos, Richard Graves, Byron Jones, Bo Jung, Alice Gamina, Drew Bunkley, and Yasu Chiba. Catherine Cox, rest in peace to your father. We're going to have a drink soon. Email the show at hardparkingpodcast@gmail.com. Join me on Instagram at jfinning. Join the Hard Parking Violations Facebook group. Follow me on TikTok at hardparkingj. And I can't grow that. You're telling the world how great this show is. So let's do this. Let's grow this thing together. And I will talk to you all next week.
Shut up!